It's time for Windows Weekly, episode 166. Paul Thurrott rubbing his eyes. He's been working hard on his Windows Phone book, and good news, he can finally reveal all the details about the new Windows Phone. That's coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 166, recorded July 22nd, 2010. Revenge of the White Icons. Windows Weekly is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Face-to-face meetings are sometimes important, but they can be a hassle and a waste of money. Do more, travel less with GoToMeeting. For your free 30-day trial, visit gotomeeting.com/Windows Weekly. And by Carbonite. Backing up the files on your PC or Mac is safe and easy with Carbonite. For a free trial plus 2 free months with purchase, go to carbonite.com. Offer code Windows. And by audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that covers everything that's happened in Redmond, Washington, even if Microsoft didn't do it.
Traffic issues.
Yeah, right.
Construction.
It's the local show for Redmondians.
Right. And that I'm 3,000 miles away should not in any way impact your enjoyment.
The good news, there's somebody in Portland doing a show about Dedham, so it all works out. It's a symmetry. That's Paul Thurrott, the voice on the other end. Paul is the news editor for Windows IT Pro, the man in charge of the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com, and the author of Windows Phone Secrets. Our man about town. Hello, Paulie.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Good.
I am operating on very little sleep.
Now, I read an article, and I was wondering if this person broke his NDA or if, in fact, news is coming out about these developer phones that y'all received. He was talking about it as, I think, a Samsung, yes?
Yep.
So now you can say some stuff because some stuff is public. Or was the NDA...
I can say all stuff.
Oh, so it's lifted now. We can talk.
Yeah.
I'm
I
excited.
can't say some stuff. You might want to just sit back and relax. This is going to take a while.
Good, because I see that We Rule has added a level cap and a coach in and some Red Dragon layers. So I'm going to start to work on my farm, and I'll check back with you.
Hey, I need you to pay attention.
I'm sorry. I'm listening, Paul.
Jeez. No,
what?
I mean, I've been waiting. I've been waiting to talk about this for a long time.
I know you've had this for a couple of weeks. So the deal was that you would be able to talk come July 21st or something?
I misunderstood because Microsoft gave me the phone. They said, we'll get in touch with you and we're going to release it to developers. We're going to have an announcement or something. You can write about it when it happens, And I didn't really think much about it. And then I think it was actually after the last podcast, I wrote them back and I said, I just want to be clear on this. I mean, when you say I can write about it, what do you mean by that? I mean, can I write about, that you've released these things to developers or...
Right.
What? And they said, no, you can write about anything you want. You can write anything with the phone. This OS, anything.
Oh, fantastic. Now, it is beta, right?
Well, what's that?
It is a beta release. It's not the final release.
No. This is very near final.
Oh, good. Well, this is exciting. Everybody, we're going to hear about the new Windows Phone. Scoop.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, normally, all things being equal, I like to share,
Oh, I know.
And I
it's
like
horrible.
to talk about stuff.
And I hate
don't
NDAs.
However, I'm also racing to finish this book before the end of the month to meet my deadline. And, I've been working extremely long hours, and I don't really have a lot of free time. So suddenly on last Friday, I had to sort of cope with the fact that in addition to all this writing I needed to do for the book, I have to write something hopefully coherent about Windows Phone for Monday morning, as well. So I split it up over the weekend and tried to, post some kind of a preview. But clearly, it's going to take a long time to discuss everything that's going on with this phone. So I think what I'll do is over time I'll write more you know, about specific features and so forth. But right now I have a phone, and it's
So what can we say? This is exciting. Can you show
everything.
it?
Yeah, of course. I don't know how well
it looks a little bit
look.
like a Nexus 1.
So I will say this. So the hardware device, it's funny, you know, when they handed me the device, there was a lot of apologies right up front. And they said, look, you know, this thing is not ship-level hardware. None of the devices we ship will look like this. They're going to be much nicer looking, thinner, et cetera, et cetera. The device itself is not actually ugly or bad looking in any way. It's fine. I mean, it's, you know, it's fine. It's not something they're going to sell.
Right.
The thing that's most striking about it, in many ways, when you first look at it, is the screen quality is just absolutely unbelievable. And interestingly, also something they apologized about, because this is the lower quality version of the screen.
Wow.
And it's actually the same screen that you can see. Well, it's bigger than the Zoom HD, but it's the same type of screen, like an OLED.
The Samsung makes these AMOLED screens. They're putting them on the Galaxy S's. That's what it looks like a Galaxy S. Yeah.
It's super, super high contrast, very
Beautiful.
bright,
Yep.
beautiful. So it's got a very rich kind of color quality. As far as in use, I would say, and I noticed this a couple of months ago. I mean, I've been using a couple of different prototype phones back at the Microsoft campus back in May. The one thing that's odd, if you're used to the iPhone, depending on the phone, and this has gotten better and better over time, but when companies first started trying to copy the iPhone, the success of the touch interface was never as good as it was, I'd say, on the iPhone. Mm-hmm. You know, the virtual keyboards were never as good. You know, just the way that you interact with the phone, it just didn't seem as good. And I think new Android phones are already doing this as well. But the Windows Phone, I can say, the touchscreen is absolutely fantastic. It's very responsive and fast, and the virtual keyboard is beautiful, and it works great, and all that kind of stuff. So there's no worries there. But I mean, I guess that, you know, there's so much to say around the phone. I'm going to try not to babble through it, because there's a lot of stuff I want to get out. But I think the most important point, and it's a real generalization, but I think it's something that needs to be said, is if you were to go back 3 years and look at what I wrote about the iPhone, the original iPhone, back when it came out, and you have to remember what a splash that phone made when it was first released, because it was so much better than anything that was in the market at the time. Dramatically better. And the more time you spent with it, though, as a reviewer, as someone like me, as a very critical person, you start to pick apart little things in it, like it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have this. You know, and over time, you create this humongous list. You know, and of course, what Apple was more concerned with at the time wasn't it does or doesn't have this very specific little picayune feature, but they were more concerned with, you know, hitting the high points. You know, remember the way they marketed it off the top of my head? It was like, you know, 3 devices in one, right? It was like a connected internet device. Right. It was a mobile browser. It was an iPod, you know, whatever it was, a communicator. You know, they had this way of describing it. And those were obviously the high-level points they were trying to make about this device, that it was like this all-in-one new kind of way of looking at a smartphone. Right. It also had, you know, pervasive multi-touch, right, which at the time was a big deal. And it had a web browser that actually worked. You know, mobile web browsers to that point were universally very lousy. When I wrote about the iPhone at the time, what I wrote was, you know, this thing it's beautiful and it's awesome. It's the best smartphone on the planet, but it's also deeply flawed, right? Mm-hmm. Because it does not have this. I went through this huge litany of things it didn't have. Now, over the next 3 years, of course, Apple fixed all of those problems. And today, I mean, obviously the iPhone 4 has its issues, but I mean, the iPhone platform is very mature. The software is excellent, and they've done a really good job, I think, over time of updating it. And of course, we have Androids, and even, you know, RIM is getting into this kind of touchscreen game and so forth. And there's a lot of companies competing for this. So now we have Microsoft, you know. And I guess what I would say is, people have made this comparison where they said, this thing is just like the iPhone from 3 years ago. Thus, Microsoft is somehow really far behind, and they should just give up. This is ridiculous. And the funny thing about that comment is, it's actually right to say that, but not for the reason that they think. And the reason that people have said this is just like the iPhone from 3 years ago is because it's missing some of the same exact features that the iPhone was missing 3 years ago.
Cut and paste, for instance.
Cut and paste, and actual, like, true multitasking, although actually Windows Phone does have multitasking, but whatever. That's incorrect. That's not the reason it's like the iPhone. The reason that Windows Phone is like the original iPhone was 3 years ago is that in the market into which it's shipping, it is in fact in some ways dramatically better than anything else that's out there in the market right now. It actually is very innovative and does some things in ways that are very unique and interesting and visually exciting. You know, I talked, or I sort of alluded to last week, some of these experiences where you see stuff appear on the phone and you just start smiling. You can't believe like this thing got on there automatically. It's really kind of neat the way it works.
Right.
On the other hand, if you're a critical person, if you're a technical person, a power user, whatever, it's going to be, like we've said this before, it's going to be very easy to tick off a list. Like, well, yeah, but it doesn't have this, doesn't have this, it doesn't have this. I mean, the more you dig into it, the more it doesn't have in a way. And that almost sounds like a negative. But the thing I would just remind people of, and I'm trying to be very balanced in the way that I cover this, both on my own site, but also on the blog where I'm writing about writing the book and so forth, is that Microsoft is doing this on purpose. Not that that makes it okay, but I want people to understand that it's by design, that they want to hit some high points. They intend to fill in these features over time and have announced that they will, in fact, be doing that.
Why is it, though? Is it a difficult thing to do, cut and paste or something?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, I wouldn't see, again, I wouldn't focus on that specific feature, but the way I would say it is...
Well, you know people will.
Right, but this is how I would communicate this.
Okay.
Is there were two choices you could make. You're starting over from scratch. We're going to accept that that's happening. And the reason we accept that that's happening is Microsoft did the alternative last year. They took this platform that had been around for 15 years, and they put lipstick on top of it. And they made this high-level interface, which actually is, by the way, nice. It is nice. The Windows Mobile 6.5 interface, that front thing that you see, the home, the start screen, the lock screen, even the programs list, right to about that point, is really nice. And if it's running on a capacitive type screen, it performs very well. The problem with doing that, though, is that parts of Windows Mobile literally are 15 years old. And it doesn't take too long as you dive into this interface to find those old UIs. They're in there. They were designed for styluses, little tiny tips that you would tap on the screen. You can't hit them with your finger. They don't work, you know? So this approach didn't work. In fact, it was universally panned, you know? So that's one alternative. So you're not going to do that. It didn't work. So you're going to start over. There are only two ways to start over. You can start over and do everything right, but that takes 2 years, in this case, we'll say about 2 years, and the market's going to change in 2 years, right? So it's going to make it very hard for you to adapt and respond to ongoing market changes. Or you can look at the schedule and say, what can we do in 1 year? Let's hit the high points. Let's put stuff out that real people will really want, right? Not do it the Microsoft way. Remember, I've made fun of this a lot. Microsoft approaches problems with a sledgehammer. Let's make a platform. Let's create APIs. Let's have roundtables with developers. Let's do, you know, and all this time goes by, and then at the end they make an incredible, complete end-to-end platform. But Apple has run away with another market. You know, I mean, Apple doesn't do things this way. So in this case, what they said was, look, we got to get this thing out fast. What can we do in X amount of time? Let's hit some high points. Let's do things, like I said, that people are really going to respond to in positive ways, and we'll fill in the gaps so that after 2 years, we can also respond to market trends, but also fill in the gaps, you know, that kind of thing. I think on that note, it was kind of the right decision, you know. And I've had this discussion on my blog back and forth with people like, well, why doesn't it have this? Don't you think they should have done this first? Don't you think they should have done this first? And honestly, looking at it, no. I think that what they did do first actually does make sense. I think that, you know, one guy said, had a conversation around, you know, they've added Facebook integration, but they don't have copy and paste. Would you really have made that decision? Now, I don't think that that was the decision.
It's probably not an equal trade-off, though. I mean, come on.
But in the real world,
maybe.
What's more important to people on a phone?
Right.
The ability to keep up with their friends, or their ability to copy and paste between applications?
That's a good point.
No, I mean, if you really think about it, there are 500 million people on Facebook now. Maybe Facebook is more important. It may not be the technical decision that you or I, as kind of technical people or power users or whatever, may want to hear. But I think when you really think about it, it makes a lot of sense. So anyway, as to the high-level stuff, the big picture stuff, the places where Windows Phone just, I mean, kicks the crap out of whatever else is out there, it's this media stuff, right? Mostly. The Pictures Hub, the Music and Videos Hub, even the People's Hub, People Hub, and the integration possibilities that are in there. You know, not just the stuff that Microsoft ships on the device itself, but the possibilities for third parties to extend those things in different ways. The simplest example in the world, and the one that I'll give just because it's so obvious and so basic, is if you have an iPhone and you want to look at pictures, you have to think of all the different places where pictures could be, right?
That's true.
You can have pictures in a phone. It has a pictures app, right? Yeah. You have a camera that takes pictures, right? Yeah. So there's a photo, whatever they call it, or photo.
Access to the photo album from the camera is there,
right?
Yeah.
But what about your pictures on MobileMe? Even in a case where Apple has an online service where you can store pictures, you can't actually access MobileMe pictures from the iPhone Pictures app. You have to use a separate application. It's a MobileMe gallery application, right? If you have pictures on Flickr, there's a Flickr app. If you have pictures on Picasa Web, Google's web service, Google doesn't have one, but third parties do have Picasa web apps. If you want to look at pictures on Facebook, because people often post pictures on Facebook, well, there's a Facebook app. In, out, out. All day long. You can go in and out of different apps. They're not in the same place. On Windows Phone, except for MobileMe, everything I just described could be in this pictures. Well, I mean, MobileMe could be too, but I just don't expect Apple to do that. Could be made available from the phone from a single interface.
Right.
And that's really exciting. And that's what I mean when you just kind of smile. Like if you're not ready for it, you can't believe it's there.
Right.
So, for example, when I look at my own phone, there's a gallery. And there are different ways to look at this, but the simplest way is just like all pictures, right? So there are these galleries, there are thumbnails. So camera roll is there, and then there's folders for the pictures that I sync to the phone. I have a folder that I call favorites, so just favorite photographs. There are pictures that I have saved from the web in their own folder, right? And then you scroll down a little bit, and it's like, oh, look, there's some folders from Windows Live. That's interesting. There's some more folders from Windows Live. There are folders from Facebook, like that's interesting. And this stuff is all there together in one interface. And that's what I mean, the pictures that are in this particular list from Facebook are pictures that I put up. So I'm not going to spend too much time looking at my own pictures, I suppose. But if you scroll over in this interface, you also get to go look at what other people are posting right now. Flickr, Facebook, Windows Live, whatever. All in one interface. You can comment on them right there. You can see when people have commented on your pictures, no matter where you posted them, and then reply right from this one interface. No matter where that reply goes to, it goes automatically to the right place. It's really kind of exciting and integrated and fun, and it's what I mean when I say. I'm looking at it now. I just saw something I'd never seen before already. So it's amazing. You can look at pictures by date, and if you click the date clicker, you get this grid of dates that, in my case, I don't even know how far it goes back. It goes back to 2002.
So it sounds like they focused on social integration over a lot of other things. That was a high priority for them.
Okay, yeah, and I wouldn't actually leave it at social integration, although. Yes, social integration maybe, let's say, is job one. But it's not just social integration. It's integration of many things, integration where it makes sense. It's inconsistent, oddly. So one of the things I was just writing about today is you can have in fact, let me go look at it just so I make sure I get this right. You can have all kinds of accounts set up on this thing. And those accounts are going to be different depending on what they are. And you can have different instances of account types. So if I have 3 Windows Live accounts, I could have 3 Windows Live accounts, set up on the phone, right? So you have this primary Windows Live account, your primary Windows Live ID, and this is where you get the feeds from, right? It's where you get your, well, actually, that's the only thing that's unique about it. It's the feeds. It's the thing that it determines which account you use to access your Zune content or your Xbox Live achievements, right? All that stuff. All the stuff that's wrapped around your Windows Live ID. You have to have one main account, and that's where that stuff all comes from. But any Windows Live account can have email, contacts, calendar, and photos. Okay?
Okay.
You can have a Facebook account, contacts, photos, and feeds, right? You can have a Gmail, Google account, email, calendar, and contacts. Yahoo is email only. You can have Exchange type accounts, email, contacts, calendar. And then you can, there are advanced setups. You can do any type of email account, no matter what it is, you can get it connected. You can have an interesting assortment of these accounts. You could have one Gmail account that is just email, one Gmail account that's email, contacts, and calendar, one Gmail account that's just contacts and calendar. And they all mix together on the phone in different ways. So the inconsistency of it, I would say, falls in 2 parts. One is that the account types are inconsistent between each other because some accounts just have different capabilities, right? Facebook doesn't have a calendar. I mean, that's just the way it is. The other inconsistency, though, is in the way that these things are integrated on the phone. So, for example, in Calendar, all of the calendar accounts, no matter where they come from, can be shown in the same interface. And you can turn them on and off. I'm looking at mine now, and I can see 3 different color codes based on where the calendar, information comes from. But it's all aggregated together into a single view. Nice. In the People Hub, and some people may not actually want this, all of your contacts, no matter where they're from, are all displayed in the same exact list. And there's no actual way, and this is one of those inconsistencies, to filter it out without just turning off contacts from that account. You may or may not want that. I could picture a situation where somebody wanted their Exchange contacts separate from everyone else,
Yeah, for business reasons or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, but there are interesting ways to do things like link accounts. And the linking occurs on the phone. It doesn't affect any of the actual accounts. One of the really interesting bits about this is, let's say you have a person who's only in a Facebook, is only on Facebook. That you don't have a contact card for them in some other account, but you want to change something. So they don't actually let you change Facebook accounts from the phone. But what they'll do is automatically create a duplicate account in Windows Live. It will make the changes there, and then it will apply the changes to the aggregated view of that, single contact card. It's pretty nicely thought through. I mean, it's a nice system. Now, on the flip side, if you configure multiple email accounts, like I've configured 1, 2, 3, 4 of them on this phone, they all appear separately. There isn't a unified inbox. It's inconsistent, right? Now, some people may not want a unified inbox, but I think there should at least be the option, But again, it's a V1 thing. I think, again, it wasn't, can we do a unified inbox or a unified calendar? I don't know how the decision was made. I mean, I'm sure different teams were responsible for both those things. They were both written from scratch. So none of this stuff was taken from anywhere else, except for possibly Internet Explorer. So who knows? For whatever reason, in V1 we have integrated calendar. We don't have integrated inbox. Maybe that comes in V2 or in some later update. But I'm really kind of blown away by this. And I think speaking generally, the thing that's most interesting is how exciting this thing is without having a single third-party app to run on it. There's nothing. I mean, the handful of apps that I actually do use fairly regularly on the iPhone just aren't on this thing. And I just find myself not caring.
Right.
I mean, a lot of what I do on the iPhone is, in fact, like the Facebook app, right? Because I tend to post to Facebook when I'm out in the world doing something. If I'm home all day doing nothing, I don't, I'm doing nothing today. I'm hi, Facebook. I tend to go to Facebook when I have something to say.
Right.
Because I'm traveling or whatever. So I don't miss that, but then I don't need to miss it because that's integrated. I don't actually need a Facebook app, as it turns out. Facebook is just part of the phone.
People want to know in the chat room if multiple Exchange accounts are allowed. I'm sure that's the case. Yes. And multiple active syncs. That's an interesting.
Multiple of anything. Yep.
Multiple of anything. I think that's
3
nicely
Google
done.
accounts on here right now. I've got 2 Exchange accounts. I've got
that's
Yahoo.
Recognizing that this is going to be used by business, I guess, and people will have business accounts as well as private accounts, and they'll want to use both on the phone. That seems to me that
right. And actually, that's an interesting point. So I don't know that I'm going to just show you this, and who knows? I don't know if it's how this will look, but in the it's not. It's going to get washed out because it's so white. So
get it a little closer because the camera. Yeah, see, the camera will iris to it.
So you can see how plain looking that UI is.
Yeah,
it's
the
black
Zune
text and white.
Zune UI kind of big text.
Well, the reason I show that though is some people have pointed out there's this weird difference between some of the really rich experiences like pictures and music and video that are just rich panoramic experiences with scrolling and all this stuff. And then you go into Calendar or the email application I just showed you, and it's like, whoa, that's really kind of stark looking,
Right.
I actually think that that's by design, and I actually think it makes a lot of sense. I would say that the UI of the phone itself, regardless of what you're talking about, is really designed to get out of the way and let the content kind of go to the front. When you're doing something like looking at photos, especially, there's the sort of suddenly canonical example here, it makes sense that this would be a rich visual experience. They're photos. You can change the background panorama wallpaper to be any picture you want, which is a really cool capability. Like this is just one of the This is just one of the Windows 7 wallpapers I just threw back there because it's a neat little, if I get this. I can't do it backwards. Sorry. Panoramas. So it makes it very personal. It's visual and all that kind of stuff. In that case, the picture is the content. It's what you want to look at. The UI, such as it is actually just a text list. You just don't see it because you're looking at the pictures.
Right.
When you go into email and you're dealing with text, or you go into calendar, you're looking at your appointments or whatever, there are no pictures. There's no gunk. There's no UI Chrome. I really think that that's by design. And like I said, I think it makes a lot of sense because you're getting a job done. You want to go in, look at your email, answer some if you have to, triage it, whatever, and you get out, you're done. It is by design, but that doesn't excuse it. I think it's fine. I think it's the appropriate UI. Right. You know, you can look at overly busy UIs, and again, I don't mean to throw Apple over the coals here per se. It's just that I have a lot of experience with the Apple stuff. If you look at something,
well,
really
it's also the phone to beat. I mean, that's what everybody's.
Yeah, and actually, I'm not even using a phone UI in this case. If you look at something like the contacts app, the address book application on the iPad, it looks a little too much like a real address book, or the book thing where you flip in the thing.
Yeah,
Apple is almost too concerned with the UI.
Yeah,
whereas I think, and I said that before I even knew what this was, and in many ways, I always thought one of the big advantages of say the Kindle for ebook reading is that there's no UI around it. The device itself is kind of ugly. You're concerned about the book. You read the book, you get lost in the book. You don't care about the UI. I mean, Apple, for whatever it's worth, in many of these applications, it seems like they're a little too concerned about the UI. Look, you can make the page flip. Look at that. And they go back and forth slow. Look at it.
This is actually what a number of people said about the Windows Phone UI. In fact, I think this is what Microsoft is saying: pure digital, right? Digital from the ground up. We're not going to try to emulate real-world experience with page turns and desktop metaphors. We're going to make something that's for the
argument I've been making right from day one. Just because we do something in the real world doesn't mean that metaphor makes sense in the digital world.
Right.
In fact, I think you should look at whatever the form factor of the device is, or if you're talking about a PC, the screen size, whatever. Take advantage of the inherent capabilities of the thing. Emulating real-world objects is lazy, and
I'm not sure. I might say that I'm argue in favor of it. At least in the early days, when GUIs were new, it made sense to make it look like something you already knew because it made it easier to understand. Folders and desktops made it easier to understand. It may be that it's dated.
In the early days, but those things never look like they're real objects.
Right.
So, I mean, in many ways, those metaphors work best when they are abstracted and maybe proving that the metaphors didn't make sense to begin with. If you look at something, just look at Apple's OSs over time, icons get prettier and prettier and prettier, and by the time you get to Mac OS X, they're like little photographs of objects. Right. I mean, okay, maybe we've beaten this metaphor to death. Let's move, maybe it's time for something new. There's no reason for a digital book to emulate page turning. Right. That's just silly. And
although, ironically, Microsoft patented the page turn, or was going to patent the page turn.
But also, ironically, never used it in anything.
Never did.
So,
but they own it.
Well, no, I mean, if you use like a Kindle application on the iPhone or iPad, I mean, one of the things I really like about it is you can it makes sense of the device. In other words, you're going to be holding the device in a certain way. So what makes sense to turn a page? Do you really want to flip it with your finger, which you can do? No, you want to tap the edge of the screen because that's where your finger is.
Right.
Tap, 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 and the page progresses. It makes sense, and it takes advantage of the form factor. It's smart. Anyway, there's a lot going on here.
I think it's very interesting. I think you can really make the case that maybe this is the post-modern UI or the big advance in UI to get away from.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. Although I would just, a lot of people are like, oh, the boxes are awfully plain, and
it does look plain.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it does look plain until you have something on there. I mean,
well, but it may be saying, look at contents. What counts.
It looks plain until you log in, and then it has your stuff on it. And I would also remind people, as far as looking plain goes, consider a grid of icons on a typical iPhone screen, and tell me what information that those icons can relay to you beyond the fact that this is the application that does this. That basically all you can do is put a little badge on it that has a number.
Right.
So you can say, look, I have 2 unread emails, or I have 1 appointment, or 1 missed message, or whatever. The icons on the tiles on the Windows Phone start screen can relay information, not just number. So, for example, on the calendar, it says record Windows Weekly Podcast, Skype, 2 o'clock to 3:30.
Right.
I don't have to go into my calendar to see that that's the next thing on my schedule. In the iPhone, I would have to go into the calendar because it would say 1.
That's why I'm a fan of Android widgets. Same idea, where you're putting information there. Although maybe a little clunky compared to what Microsoft's doing with this new UI.
It's fun. I mean, what they've done. There's goofy little things, you know, like the Xbox Live icon, well, the games icon has your avatar, and it's actually your avatar. So if you took the time to customize your avatar on Xbox Live on the console, he appears here, and he kind of interacts with the logo. You know, the logo punches him around a little bit. He peeks up, you know, beyond the bottom of the screen. It's cute. You know, the pictures tile is customized with one of my own photographs. The music and videos tile is customized with artist imagery from the last band that I listened to in the music player.
Oh, that's neat.
My own tile is a tile, you know, called Me, and it flashes between a picture of me, the text Me, and then also my very latest social networking post, whatever it was. You know, the first, you know, X number of characters, whatever can fit on the tile. And all of these tiles, as plain as they supposedly are, relay information of some kind and animate in some way. You know, one of the cool little animations you see on the email tiles is as email comes in, it doesn't change from 1 to 4. It kind of rotates over a little wheel. It's like 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, the number actually goes up in real time as you're looking at it. It's kind of a neat little effect. And there's a lot of those kind of cool little animation effects as you do stuff, you know, in the interface. It's nice.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense that Microsoft should, and this is my sense, tell me if I'm wrong, sit back and say, let's reinvent the UI. Let's start from, as you said, start from scratch.
The phone is not a PC.
Right. And you know, this was, I think, the mistake they made early on with Windows Mobile and Windows CE was it was really kind of a Windows shrunk. And
it was exactly Windows shrunk. In fact, you know, on a pseudo PC device, like those very first handheld PCs, you could be like, all right, it's going to look like Windows 95. That's fine. But then you put it on a handheld device. And of course, what they did was they had the start button down in the bottom left of the screen, just like they do on a computer. Well, people would hit it by mistake all the time because you're holding it down there.
Yeah.
Right. So eventually they moved it to the top, and you can kind of see how it evolved. But yeah, clearly these devices require something unique. I mean, to their credit, Apple didn't port the Mac down to a little device. No. I mean, they didn't do that either. But I think here we are. You know, it's 3 years later, and I think already this app-driven model, which is arguably almost certainly Apple's biggest strength in the mobile market, is the size of this app market. It's funny how this design betrays that design to be a little bit of a weakness because you become very reliant on that. You know, Apple makes a big deal out of, you know, we have 225,000, we have 250,000 apps, you know, whatever it is. It's a big deal for them, and it is a big deal because it speaks to the strength of that market. But it also, on a more general level, speaks to the kind of inanity of what you have to do on that phone because it's like in, out, in, out, in, out. And, you know, the ability to multitask doesn't change the in-out thing. It just changes how you go about in and outing of the applications. I mean, you're still going app, 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 app. I mean, it's like DOS. You know? No, I mean, it really is. I mean, on a multitasking GUI system like Windows or the Mac, you can switch between applications, you know, in space. You don't have to. You don't run one, close it, run one, close it. I mean, in many ways, even though iPhone has multitasking now, you really, you know, because of the, you know, you kind of app, you know, close it, app, you know, it really is in many ways like DOS. Now, by the way, that would be true on Windows Phone too if you were running apps. But again, I think the strength of this system is, in many cases, you won't have to run individual apps, although you will. But they've really thought through some of these integrated experiences in ways that I really think people are going to respond to. And again, you know, it's one thing to see a Windows Phone and to play with it in real life, but you have to see it with your stuff. Honestly, just by logging onto this thing with your Windows Live ID and watching this stuff kind of just pop all over the phone, it's unbelievable. It really is neat.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Now, we can't see it except
and I don't have a good way to show it to you. I'm sorry. I suppose I could.
That's all right.
I mean, that's just, you can't see. I mean,
people are putting up videos, I'm sure, by now. Yeah, that's pretty, that's a pretty good shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I can't navigate.
Do you know, are all the phones going to have a gigahertz processor? I mean,
yeah. So there's So there's minimum hardware specs for Windows Phone. There's a lot of them actually, and one of them, yes, is a minimum of a gigahertz processor. 2 screen resolutions. I want to say they're the more common one's going to be the HD2 style device, 800 by 480. And I think the lower end one, which is probably what's on this phone, is what's on this phone, is probably 320 by 480.
It's interesting that they're specifying 2 resolutions. This is one of the things that makes it hard to develop for Android. There's so many resolutions, you know.
But this is the experience with Windows Mobile, because these OEMs could make whatever size screen they wanted. Right. And if some company came to Microsoft and said, look, we want to make a specialty device and it's going to run this crazy resolution that no one else uses, they'd be like, okay. And they would customize it just for those guys, you know.
So not anymore, though, you're saying?
Oh, no.
No. What about tablets?
So I asked them about that, and currently they say they have no plans for that. But I have to think that this would be an obvious thing on a tablet. Some of the other cool stuff on here, by the way, is they require you to have at least a 5-megapixel camera. It has specific hardware buttons. You know about the start button, the search button. This integrated search stuff is awesome, by the way. Back button. Back buttons. By the way, God bless the back button.
Oh yeah.
I have.
Oh yeah.
I have been a little bitch about the back button on the iPhone, and let me tell you something. You go back to a phone that has one, and you want to cry. You're so happy.
I'm with you on that. This is a Steve. Button. This is a Steve. We don't like buttons.
Oh, this is the greatest feature ever on a phone, and we've had them forever. And I don't why they don't have a back button. I'll never know. Anyway, but they also have they specify a hardware button for the camera, right? And the coolest thing about this is you can lock this thing down. You can lock it with a password, like you would, probably any smartphone these days. But if you hold down the camera button when the phone is off and locked, it will actually open the camera and allow you to take pictures and videos without logging in. You can't do anything else. Like you couldn't go to another app. But they call this pocket to picture, right? I wrote about this. I wrote about this in the book. This happened to me on the trip. I was with my dad in Colorado.
Right.
We pulled up to an intersection and he said, "Oh, look, a deer! Take a picture." And I whipped out the iPhone and I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I'm trying to get it. And I'm like, "Come on!"
5 minutes later.
And then I have to log in and it won't do it. And then I'm on the wrong screen and I can't find the camera app. Right. And then what I ended up taking was like a blurry picture of this thing's butt as it went behind a tree, because that's what the experience is like, right? Anyone who has an iPhone knows that what I just said happens all the time. And with this phone, they've actually engineered it so that won't happen, and it's pretty damn quick. It's nice, It's nice. Now, if you do that and it's locked, you can if you try to hit start or whatever, you'll get the lock screen and then you can log in again. And it has such an awesome lock screen. I don't know if you can see this.
It's pretty, yeah. Tilted a little bit because of the glare, but
yeah. See if I can.
Boy, I love those AMOLED screens. I think, oh, gorgeous! Gosh, is that gorgeous? Yeah,
just gorgeous.
Yeah. And how do you unlock it? Slide to unlock?
So actually, if you're familiar with, it's you slide up to unlock it, like
just
that.
like a Zune, okay.
But yeah, and I was gonna say it's actually just like a Zune, because if you're not sure what to do, you're looking at this like, oh, how do I get into this thing? If you actually tap it, it jumps. See how, I don't know if you can see that, but it will bump.
Yeah.
It's like, look,
push me up, push me up.
The other thing it does, there's all kinds of little things. I could go on all day about the little things, but on the screen where on the camera app screen where you're looking, through it at something. You've obviously in the middle of the screen, you've got what you're looking at. But over on the left, there's this probably 20, 25 pixel wide slice of the previous picture in the camera roll. And the reason it's there is to remind you that you don't have to exit this interface. You can actually just swipe it over and go back and look at that picture you just took and any other pictures. You can scroll through the whole list. If it didn't come out right, immediately, it's not hard to go in and out. And then you just swipe back and you take another one if it didn't come out right or whatever. Just little touches like that. And I think that stuff is in many ways more important than cut and paste. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but I would just, a lot of people who, especially Apple guys, who kind of read my stuff and say, what the hell, you've been really harsh on Apple all these years and now you're giving Microsoft a pass. I think you're missing the point, which is that when the iPhone was out and was new, I recognized that it was the greatest thing in the world. But I was also saying, it's not perfect. Here's the list of things that are wrong with it. And like I said, Apple fixed those things over time. This is the same thing. It's not perfect. You could mention any feature and I can tell you exactly what's wrong with it. Everything is missing something. But that doesn't mean it's not awesome. It's the same thing. I mean, that's my job. I'm a reviewer. I pick things apart. But I also think about the sort of normal people that would use this thing. And I just know from experience, when people look at this, they're like, oh, my God. You know, it's so awesome the way you can do stuff on this phone. It's awesome the way that the pictures come up. You know, it really, really works well. It's nice.
I can't wait to get one.
I can't wait for you to get one.
I think what we're seeing is huge innovation in the phone space, and I'm glad Microsoft is piping up.
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
It has. We haven't. You know, I'm thinking to PCs. It really wasn't a three-way race in PCs, but this may shape up to be a 3 or more way race in phones. And we've already talked about this on TWiT, that all of the innovation in digital technology right now is happening on these small devices. This is where the innovation is.
It would be very easy to draw some comparison with the early days of the PC industry. And by PC industry, I don't mean the IBM PC industry. I mean, you know, personal computers in general. And if you look back to the early 1980s, you know, there were companies like Tandy and Commodore and Atari and Apple, obviously, many of which are just long gone, or at least in the PC space, long gone. We look back at that now, and we sort of talk about how inevitable it was that it consolidated down to a single major player and then some minority players and so forth. You know, that may not actually be the natural market, normal, you know, for every market. And it's not necessarily true that the smartphone market has to follow that same path. On the other hand, we are at such an early stage right now that even if the smartphone market does follow that PC market trend, we are years and years away from that consolidation.
Oh, yes.
Because we're still very much on the way up, you know. And there are going to be false starts and half starts, and companies are going to come and go that we kind of, you know, years from now will forget even existed and all that kind of stuff. To the people who think that Windows Phone has no chance at all, I would just say, you know, this market is growing in leaps and bounds. You don't understand. Apple could grow at double their current rate, and Windows market is still billions of dollars of industry every year. I mean, it's going to be a big market. So, you know, we'll see. I still don't have any, and I never will have any opinion or feeling about how it's going to do in the market. I can point out to you where this thing is better than what's out there. I can point out to you where it's not. I think it's good enough to compete. I think it's good enough to deserve a part of that pie or whatever. But what does that mean? I think the Zune HD is good enough to deserve part of that pie too. And from what I can tell, it's got the crumbs that the rat dropped, you know, away from the plate. I mean, I don't know. So reality and opinion often don't interact.
It's
but
really interesting. We'll and however, you know, whatever fanboy you subscribe, whatever color your blood runs, this is good for everybody because competition is what stimulates innovation. And I know I sound like a broken record when I say that, but
no, it's important. You know, one of the big complaints I had about the iPad when it first came out is like, you've got this device that really is a different fundamental form factor. I mean, it's the same, you know, it's a slate kind of deal, bigger, but, you know, there should be some concession to that from a UI standpoint. It was a little disappointing that they had the same exact UI. I wouldn't be surprised over time to see the iPad UI and the iPhone, iPod Touch UIs diverge somewhat, not from an application compatibility standpoint, but just from a UI standpoint, because, you know, there's so much more you can do on that bigger device. You know, take advantage of it in more profound ways than they have so far.
Do you use the Zune Marketplace to sync? Do you use ActiveSync? Could you use both? What happens with the Zune Marketplace in this phone?
So the only interaction, and I have to say this is actually a big negative for Windows Phone as far as I'm concerned. The only interaction you have with the phone on a PC is through the Zune PC software. And if you think about the way a Zune HD works or an iPod would work through iTunes, you use a Zune today as you would use a Windows Phone to sync your media collection, music, videos, also pictures, to the device. So if you have a movie you want to put on the phone, I mean, that's the way you have to do it. There's no other way to do it. That's fine. I don't mind that stuff. The problem is they're using Zune as the way that you load large updates onto the phone, as the way you download pictures from the phone. There's no way to do it outside of the Zune software. If you think about any digital camera today, even if they have a crazy proprietary cable like we were talking about earlier, it still runs the same software. If I plug this camera into Windows, or if I plug my iPod, well, actually not my iPod, if I plug my iPhone into Windows, you can use the Windows built-in photo acquisition software to download those pictures and rename them and put them in folders, however it works. You can use whatever application you want. With Windows Phone, at least in this initial version, you can only do that through the Zune software. The problem with that is, you're going to have the Zune software on there anyway because you want to do the media sync. Okay, fine. But it doesn't have a lot of options in there, at least not in the version I'm using, to do things like name the photos, or name the folder they're going to, or that kind of thing. The photos that you take with the camera are geotagged, and they have a lot of good metadata information and all that kind of stuff. So they're not hard to organize, but I think that I don't understand why they broke with the existing system. It worked fine. It works for everyone else, even Apple stuff, on Windows. So why would you do something different? The other kind of weird negative side effect of that is if you have like an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3 or whatever device out in your living room, you can plug an iPhone, a Zune, or a portable hard drive, whatever it is, into one of these devices and read the content on there and play it out over your HD TV. If you plug a Windows Phone into an Xbox 360, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't see anything because it just doesn't interact with the outside world in the same way that all these other devices do. So I actually think that's a mistake.
Interesting. Yeah.
And if you're familiar, and you are, but if people listening to this are familiar with the way that the iPhone and I guess the iPod Touch have evolved over time with regards to the online store and what you can do when you're not connected to a PC, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? On the iPhone side, you can do things like browse a pretty complete version of the store, both content store and an app store. But the content store got better over time, right? If I remember correctly, the iPhone version of the iTunes store probably was just music, maybe in its first version.
Yeah, it was just music, then video.
Yeah, they had videos, podcast and whatnot. Yep. One of the nice things on the iPhone now is, and this wasn't true right away, but is true now, is that you can download a new podcast episode. You can't do the wireless sync stuff, which is a shame, but you can at least download an episode.
Well, so you can't subscribe to an episode, which is extremely frustrating on the iPod.
Right, but at least you can get one, right?
Yeah.
You're on the road. There is a new version. You can get it. Okay, fine. The Windows Phone marketplace stuff is a little more limited, depending on what you're talking about. It does do wireless sync with your PC, which is awesome over Wi-Fi. That's neat. And you do have over-the-air capabilities for music across the board. So if you want to buy music from the marketplace on the phone when you're on the go, you can do that. If you have a Zune Pass, you can stream songs over the air. It works fine. I've used that. You can download them and buy them. All that stuff works. There's no way to access podcasts, which in my opinion is dumb. TV shows or movies, music videos, all that stuff. You can't get any of that. It's just music. They also have the App Store over the air, but as far as content goes, you're pretty much relegated to music. And what that means is if I'm on a trip and it's a week long and even though I've subscribed to a podcast, if a new episode of that podcast comes out, it would be a little contorted for me to get it on the phone, especially if I was syncing the phone with my media library back at home. Now, not to get off on a complete sidetrack, one of the big advantages of the Zune PC software is that it interacts with Zune devices and now Windows phones in ways that are more elegant than what Apple offers. And you can actually connect your phone as a guest and copy content to and from the device. So I suppose if you were on the road, had a PC, but it wasn't your syncing PC, you could still download a podcast and sync it to the phone from that other PC. So at least you can do that. But again, there's no way to do it just with the phone. And I think that would be the preferable scenario. I hope what I just said makes sense.
And as you point out, that's an evolutionary thing that probably will happen at some point.
I think it's going to, yeah. And by the way, it's I don't know. They gave us some kind of interim Zune version. It's possible that this version of Zune will never ship, or maybe it ships in a month or something. And then October's going to roll around and Zune 5.0 is going to come out. And it's going to have all these extra, features, and who knows? This stuff could change pretty quickly. I actually don't know. So I'm just telling you the way it is right now.
All right, let's take a break. That was a long
I have more to say.
review. I know you do. Well, if you have more to say, hold on. But we do want to take a break because God knows this isn't an infinitely long show, just a somewhat long show.
It just feels like it sometimes.
No, I was and am still very interested. This is an important product, absolutely important product. But I got to talk about another important product right now from the folks at Citrix. It's called GoToMeeting. If you are doing your meetings face-to-face, you're spending a lot of money on travel. If you're trying to do them via teleconference, which a lot of people do to save money on travel, you're putting your attendees to sleep. There is a better way. Okay, I'm being honest here. It's true. You can hear them slowly drift away into limbo. Not with GoToMeeting. GoToMeeting makes it visual, makes it interactive, makes it much more interesting. In fact, I think makes it more effective than a face-to-face meeting. GoToMeeting lets you do sales presentations, of course. You can show the PowerPoint. Here's how it works. You got a client meeting set up. It's going to be a phone meeting. You send them an invitation. You can do it via Outlook. There's an Outlook button. Or you can do it on the phone with them. Just tell them, GoToMeeting.com. Here's the meeting ID. Now, suddenly, they're seeing your desktop on their computer screen. And when the PowerPoint launches, they see the PowerPoint. You walk them through it. You're on the phone. You're talking. They're seeing. You can give them control. You can have 15 attendees at once if you want. Each of them can have control. You can collaborate together on documents, so it's great for collaboration as well. It's great for training, because if your trainee doesn't have the software, but you do, you just let them use it on your system. It's kind of mind-boggling. There's so many ways to use it. I think the best thing to do is to try it free for 30 days. Absolutely free. No limit to the number of meetings, the length of the meetings. You could use it 24/7 for 30 days if you want. By the way, that's true for the monthly GoToMeeting too when you buy it, because you shouldn't have a limit or a per meeting cost. You want to be able to use this all you want. And it includes, I should mention this, voice over IP and phone teleconferencing. Free. GoToMeeting.com/Windows Weekly. That's the website to go to for a 30-day free trial. GoToMeeting.com/Windows Weekly. I'm not asking you to buy it sight unseen. I'm just asking you to try it. Show your colleagues, your clients. By the way, they don't have to have anything installed ahead of time. You don't want to make your clients be jumping through hoops. It's very easy for them. They're grateful. To be honest, they didn't want to take you to dinner that night. They didn't want to go to they didn't want to go to all that trouble. They just wanted to see your presentation. So that's what you're doing. GoToMeeting.com/Windows Weekly. Give it a try. We thank them so much for their support of Paul's show, the Windows Weekly program. Do you want to say any more about Windows Mobile?
I'm sorry, I was just browsing the Jersey Shore soundtrack.
On your, I almost said Zune, on your Windows phone.
Same thing. So let's see.
Do you think this is going to stimulate the Zune sales? Right. In the same way that the iPod Touch took off because of the iPhone? Actually, the iPhone came first.
I would like to see Microsoft make a Zune HD2 or whatever that was a Microsoft designed Windows Phone minus the phone stuff. I think that would be smart. Basically their version of the iPod Touch. And I think the reason that would be smart is because it would be an inexpensive way for people to get into this platform and see the cool photo stuff and all that. And Microsoft's online services stuff is fantastic, and that's true for the media just as it is for everything else. I think there's a lot of neat stuff going on beyond the phone. In fact, in many ways, the phone capabilities of this thing are almost an afterthought. I don't mean because they're lousy. I mean because that's not really the primary. I mean, who spends all day on an iPhone making phone calls? You're
not me.
No, I mean, you don't, right? But it's not, not for the reasons we might joke about. I mean, it's because there's other stuff. I mean, the other stuff is more interesting. It makes phone calls, by the way, and it works fine. But that's not, to me, that's not the focus.
It's funny how we've gotten away from that on phones.
Yeah. It's a phone. What is a phone? Why do we call it a phone? I can't remember.